sermon this morning is taken from John 17. He says, I have given them your word, so he's praying to God. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I'm not asking you to take them out of the world, but I ask you to protect them from the evil one. They do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. As you have sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world. And for their sakes I sanctify myself, so that they may also be sanctified in truth. Truth. It's the big mystery, I think. What are we supposed to be doing as human beings? Something that helped me and continues to help me is to understand the pressure of our biological self. You could say your physical body when you have appetites, when you want to eat certain things, when you don't want to do certain things, when you want to sleep, when you want to nap. Many times these are driven by biological pressures. Now, if you plant a garden, you'll realize that if you do nothing, the plant will grow organically. If it is a fruit-bearing plant, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to bear the most fruit. We have learned that pruning a plant, planting a plant next to other plants, giving it a certain amount of space, making sure that as bees have access to pollinate, these are choices of consciousness meant to improve the harvest of the fruit. And the same thing can be said of ourselves as souls. People have this idea that it's human nature to oppose other people, or it's human nature to want to eat these things. I would say there's biological pressure to follow a survival mentality, to want to appease, these uncomfortable feelings. They say that if you're growing a tomato plant, then you want to cut the branches that do not appear to be bearing fruit, so that more energy of the plant goes towards growing the fruit. So imagine if you're the tomato plant and you're just growing and everything's fine, and you got lots of leaves, and somebody cuts a branch off. That would be kind of a shock to the system that would force the plant into some sort of an adjustment and adaptation. And that adaptation happens to yield more fruit, because the plant has more energy to give to those elements rather than to all this foliage. We have emotional pressures as well. Situations occur that cause us to feel uncomfortable. And you could say, well, it's human nature to want to get away from that, so we have this philosophy known as hedonism, which is pleasure is good, pain is bad. Whatever I do to move into pleasure is good, whatever I do to move into pain is bad. The problem is that that philosophy or that approach in the long term does not yield more fruit. Let's say somebody gives you a large bag of chips and you're the kind of person that goes, as long as it tastes good, I should eat it because it feels good. So there's that instant gratification. And then later, the body's going like, ugh, I don't feel great. So the delayed experience of indulging in the biological appetite and the emotional pressure relieving often leads to bad feeling after. What is the truth? Jesus said, I sanctify you in the truth. The truth is that a human being has the opportunity to make choices. The tomato plant can't choose to cut off its branch. It doesn't have the consciousness of how can I yield the most fruit. It seems to have a consciousness of pure survival. And since the tomato plant doesn't feed off its own tomatoes, it's not as focused on how many tomatoes it grows. I know you guys are dog folks. I never had a dog. But I've been around dogs, and when I was working at your house, I got to experience, what's the environment like when you have 3 dogs, and every time you come into the house and there's the energy changes. Dogs are very sensitive to any changes. More humans enter, and then is there going to be food, and can we play tug of war? And there's a lot of pressure inside, dogs to want to engage with human beings. They don't necessarily have, they have more consciousness than a plant, but they don't have the kind of decision-making ability that humans have. So it's like over and over again, they want the same thing, and they don't maybe realize, like, it's not going to come. But eventually, I think the animals sort of figure it out. I want you to experience the pressure of your conscience, which is the part in us, the mysterious part, that hungers for the truth and feels uncomfortable when we veer from the truth. It appears as though the conscience can be turned down almost to 0, so that one does not feel the pressure of the conscience. We, as beings who walk the way, have discovered that turning the conscience all the way up to 10 means we feel very subtle moments that we veer away from the pressure of the truth. Now, Jesus is saying, as a result of following the word of truth, that the world will hate you. Following the word can lead to persecution. We've talked about this many times. And if you follow the pain-pleasure principle, then why would you want to feel the hatred of the world? So we don't follow the pain-pleasure. In fact, this path is painful. It's painful because pain leads to transformation, leads to growth, leads to liberation. It's not all pain. The whole path is not painful. But one has to be willing to make a choice that seems to go against our biology, go against our survival, or our survival impulse. We learn how to deal with the negative and difficult emotions, the pressure of those, rather than trying to instantly quell them, distance ourselves from them. Because we recognize there's some truth that's being communicated as a result of some situation. Our emotions help us understand that something is going on that we need to pay attention to. I don't want you to focus on why aren't more people interested in the truth. That's actually our job. We are going to make more people interested in the truth, not by hammering them and preaching about the truth, but by loving them, by caring about them when they don't expect us to care about them, caring about people who don't expect us to care about them. Not to look around and criticize all the people who aren't doing that, because then we're no longer teaching love. But to tirelessly demonstrate that we love, because love is truth. A human being is made to love, out of love, for love. When you operate in a world that is very slow to this realization, it's going to be painful. It can be isolating. So Jesus is saying, God protect them against the evil one. It's the only explanation that I've ever been able to go, that makes the most sense as far as why are human beings so driven to disdain bearers of the truth? Why is it we have killed the prophets and those who bring about positive philosophies past a certain point? You know, you have people who are celebrated, who bring a lot of truth, but the ones who bring about the radical truth are often shunned, killed, persecuted. The only explanation that has worked for me is that there is an active component on the spiritual that is trying to move humans in the other direction. So we must be protected against that. We must be aware of when our minds begin to open a pathway to something that our conscience knows is not good, but our biology and our emotional sensitivity goes, oh, that would be good right now. So as you move more into a service modality and you start to settle into visiting people or doing things, there will be times when you may feel tired. You're not sure you want to go. And your mind begins to go, well, we could come up with a way not to do it this week. That's generally something that's motivated by something that's on the dark side. It doesn't want you to provide love. So your conscience has to go, am I just a little tired? Am I just a little frustrated, but I can go? Or am I genuinely, need a break or something like that? Because if you genuinely need a break, your conscience would be in support of. So we don't want to be so threadbare that we can't give anything. But be alert to when you could give, but your mind begins to provide some sort of very logical and rational explanation as to why you shouldn't or not that important. So, the more truth that you cultivate, the more free you become. When John said, make straight the ways of the Lord, to me, there's a sense of truth and there's an expression of it, a communication of it, and that's the direct line. The crooked way is where you feel the truth, but then you're not sure you want to go with it because how's it going to play out for me? So then you veer off, well, if I do it this way, and then it kind of makes sense here, and then I veer back this way, and then you get to this point where you go, I don't really have to do it. Or there's something that you know you probably shouldn't do. The truth goes, probably shouldn't do that, and you don't do it. That's the straight way. The crooked way goes, well, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if we looked at it this way. And we'll do this later to make up for it. And everybody else kind of does it, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. Yes. That's the crooked way. We find the path to where we want to get to satisfy the biological appetite, satisfy the emotional, or to relieve the emotional pressure. As lovers of the truth, I believe you experience how it liberates. To be free in a world that is essentially, it's a little harsh, but one large prison where people are imprisoned by thoughts, lack of consciousness around how to process emotions, woundedness that they don't know how to heal from, hard-heartedness, they don't know how to forgive people. So people are living in a state of captivity. It's funny because in a sense the way the Matrix presented it as sort of this automated track that people are on, not even realizing they're part of a matrix, is a really good analogy for where people are at spiritually. So you will find yourself and have found yourself to be much freer than that. And our desire is to go around and unshackle people. And surprisingly, oh, I'm fine with these shackles. That's sort of what I feel. People are not necessarily, don't get near my shackles. I don't want you, no, I'm fine. They don't see a problem with the way that they're in captivity. They don't see themselves in captivity. So don't mess with people who don't want to be set free because They don't want it. But those who do want to be set free, we give our lives for it.